Good evening, and what an honor it is to be here talking to all of you. I am told I make some opening remarks. It's not just going to be just few remarks, a bit longer than remarks, post which you'll have some introduction. So let me start. It may be an understatement that we are living through times of profound uncertainty, which is steadily rising before us. The world today grapples with multiple challenges, such as the conflict in the Middle East and between Russia and Ukraine. There is also the possibility of other destabilizing events, such as the dollar liquidity shocks, increases in global tariffs due to trade wars, and oil price shocks, all at the same time. In addition to these events, the emergence of a veritable China terms of trade, and that as a shock, has made it necessary for countries to take measures to safeguard their domestic production. However, how is the geopolitical churn that we see now different from the days of the World Wars and Cold War? A definite answer would be that the stakes are larger now. In the 1950s, we saw a chasm within the developed world which split into the Eastern and Western blocs. The two blocs together accounted for roughly 85% of global GDP and more than half of the world's population. The developing nations, on the other hand, received foreign aid, technical assistance, and military support driven by geopolitical interests, the bloc interests. Unlike the old days, now the geopolitical rifts of today place developing economies as key strategic movers, which is unthinkable, let's say, 20 years ago. Research shows that modern multi-aligned developing economies, if they decide to pick sides, will significantly change the economic powers of the blocs in terms of market power and population. Blocs don't exist as just two, today there are several blocs. As a quintessential modern multi-aligned nation, India's decisions will be watched by the world as we look to strengthen ties with nations that share a strategic coherence and play a central role in global supply chains. At the same time, India is also looking towards boosting domestic capacities, becoming more self-reliant in critical sectors, and building resilience against external shocks. While the past decades saw global growth led by broad multilateral trade, the coming years, I think, will likely be defined by strategic economic partnerships, and India is very well poised to take advantage of this transition. Despite this increasingly complex global environment, India's macroeconomic fundamentals remain sound, acting as a strong foundation upon which to build future growth. In 2013, India was the 10th largest economy at market exchange rate studies. Presently, it is the 5th largest economy, and the IMF has projected it to become the 3rd largest economy by 2027. India's contribution to global growth is projected to see an increase of 200 basis points in the next 5 years. India's good economic growth can be attributed to its astute COVID-19 management, coupled with series of measures undertaken by the government to strengthen its manufacturing capabilities, focus on digital and financial systems, simplification of regulatory procedures, and enhancement in ease of doing business. Just to draw your attention, other than the regular main budget which was presented in 2020 on 1st February as is done every year, that year saw us presenting 5 mini budgets. One to address the crisis, two to, meaning within each announcement, the 5 announcements, every one piece had a combination of relief, hand-holding, targeted support, and reforms. So if we talk about Atmanirbhar at any point in time, self-reliant, not in the old-fashioned term, but becoming more comprehensively self-supportive, it all started then to make sure that we rapidly move on that pace. India's recent economic performance has been particularly noteworthy for its balance between growth and stability. While many countries have struggled with inflationary pressures, India has successfully kept inflation within manageable limits. Yet another metric of stability, the general government debt, including both state and the center, when I mean state, the provinces, has followed a declining trajectory in the post-pandemic period, even as major economies witnessed a surge in gross general government debt as a percentage of their GDP. External debt too remains at a comfortable 18.8% of our GDP as of June 2024. And students of economics will be interested in knowing that fiscal deficit is an indicator with which we have very clearly worked very hard, giving ourselves a glide path, and that which will be touching its lowest point as is decided by the glide path by the next fiscal. But post that we have not given a picture would be the normal allocation. But even in this budget, we've already said, post reaching the lowest point, how are we going to approach fiscal management? And we very clearly have played a lot of emphasis on debt management, debt to the GDP ratio being one of the sustainable indicators rather than the obsessive number-based fiscal deficit. And therefore, I give you a little leeway there to say, okay, India is looking not just fiscal deficit management, but it's laid upon also for the longer term. Inclusivity remains a key cornerstone to India's growth process. Between 21 and 23, for instance, the incomes of the bottom 20% of the households increased by 75%, while the middle income groups saw gains of about 30%. Importantly, this period also witnessed a reduction in income inequality, with the Gini coefficient declining from 0.51 to 0.39. This rebalancing of income distribution highlights India's progress towards inclusive growth. India's banking system has remained robust, with low levels of non-performing assets and high capital adequacy ratios. The financial sector has been crucial in sustaining growth by providing the necessary credit to fuel investment in key industries. Meanwhile, India's infrastructure development has surged forward with large-scale projects such as Bharatmala, Sagarmala, have both ensured connectivity across the country. These are just two examples. Investments in digital infrastructure, for instance, the third, have further strengthened our economy's ability to withstand shocks with digital financial inclusion, providing access to millions of citizens who were previously underserved. A strong buffer of foreign exchange reserves serve as an insulator in the face of adverse external developments such as disruptions in capital flows and oil price hike. Efficient exchange rate management and strong capital inflows have led to a build-up of sufficient foreign exchange reserves. At the end of September 2024, Forex reserves stood at 704.9 billion US dollars. And India became the fourth economy in the world to cross the US $700 billion in forex reserves after China, Japan, and Switzerland. Forex reserves are sufficient to cover more than 12 months of imports and more than 100% of external debt as of the end of June 2024. I, for a moment, with a bit of a shudder, would like to recall India 1991. What distance have we covered? We just will have to every now and then recall how much it takes for India to just throw away or discard earlier heritage problems or legacy problems. And this is time for us to recall that moment when all of us were putting our heads down to say, what have we done to ourselves? A source of stability on the external front is India's strong comparative advantage in services. India's share in the global services export rose to 4.3% in 2022-23 from an average of 3.3% during 15-16 and 19-20. India is now the seventh largest services exporting country globally, and a phenomenon. Phenomenon in the sense that rise is phenomenal from 24th position in 2001. So 2001 you're 24th, then you move over to the seventh largest, although the percentage is 4.3 as of 22-23. India's strong macroeconomic foundation gives us confidence to face a future which has a lot of uncertainties. Our demographics provide an additional advantage with a young and energetic population that forms the base for sustained productivity growth. The next decade will see millions more entering the workforce, bringing new skills and innovation to the economy. As consumption and savings rise, India's long-term growth prospects remain anchored by these macroeconomic fundamentals. The global economic environment may present challenges, but India is well positioned to capitalize on new growth opportunities. The shift towards a more fragmented global economy, characterized by redefined alliances and changing trade patterns, could in fact work to India's advantage. As nations re-evaluate their supply chains, India hopes to become a key partner for many countries, seeking to diversify their sources of goods and services. India's rise in the Global Innovation Index and its growing influence in sectors like high-end capital goods, renewables, and pharmaceuticals signal its potential to become a vital player in global markets. India's large and youthful population offers tremendous opportunities for growth, particularly in consumption. With 43% of Indians under the age of 24, the coming decade will witness a significant expansion of consumer demand. This young generation is not only driving consumption in traditional sectors, but is also shaping new trends in technology, digital services, and in e-commerce. As they become fully integrated into the economy, we expect a strong rise in consumer spending, which will in turn fuel investment and innovation across various industries. Another key area of opportunity lies in India's burgeoning innovation ecosystem. Over the past few years, India has made significant strides in research and development, with a particular focus on leveraging low-cost, scalable solutions. This is evident, for instance, in our success in the pharmaceutical sector, where India has become a global leader in the production of affordable vaccines, and in the space sector, with Chandrayaan mission marking a significant achievement. These innovations have demonstrated India's ability to compete globally and the continued evolution of our R&D capabilities will further enhance our economic standing. One point to remember here is India's R&D, whether in space or in providing institute solutions for our infrastructure-related problems, have all been frugal. India's R&D products are very frugal, they're very cost effective. And I'm sure this is a joke or a light-hearted way of saying it. It costed us less to send Chandrayaan than to make a Hollywood film. So the frugal innovation is the feature which many of the countries today look for India's assistance or handholding in research. Yet another area of innovation opportunity lies with India's global capability centers. Have you all been to India to see any of the global capability centers? Have you all? Some of them are amazingly large. And today, many smaller units or smaller capsulated units are going to the tier 2, tier 3 towns. So they're not sitting only in those, let us say, Silicon Valleys of India, but they are moving around as well. So not just Bengaluru, not just Hyderabad, not just Noida, but moving all over. So they've become hubs for innovation and R&D, particularly in the areas such as artificial intelligence, digital services, and cyber security. With over half of GCC revenue, this is important, with over half of GCC revenue now coming from research services. They're not just backroom operators. They're not old-fashioned BPOs. So with over half of GCC revenue coming from research services, India is at the forefront of technological innovation in several industries. Moreover, the GCCs present opportunities for servicification of key areas of global value chains and aid in advancing India's AI know-how. Moreover, India's efforts in expanding financial inclusion have created a more vibrant and resilient financial system. The number of adults and with bank accounts has more than doubled since 2011, providing a larger pool of savers and investors. This increase in financial access, combined with a more educated and skilled workforce, positions India to take advantage of emerging trends in the global economy. India's promising growth trajectory is being steered by a suite of well-calibrated macroeconomic policies. The government has followed a path of fiscal consolidation while continuing to protect the vulnerable sections and investing in the economy's productive capacity. This has led to a decline in fiscal deficit and a rise in capex spending, improving the quality of government spending. As a result, the central government's revenue expenditure to capital outlay ratio nearly halved from 7.1% in FY18 to 3.3% in FY25, as per budget estimates. A key pillar of India's policy framework has been infrastructure development. Over the past decade, national highways have expanded significantly, with projects like Bharatmala transforming our connectivity. The expansion of high-speed corridors and four-lane roads has not only reduced transportation costs, but also boosted logistics efficiency, positioning India as a more competitive destination for global trade. The improvements of India's logistics performance index, rising from 54 in 2014 to 38 in 2023, are a testament to the government's focused efforts. Several landmark sector-specific reforms have played a role in ensuring stability and aiding growth. The implementation of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code in 2016 significantly helped strengthen the balance sheets of private corporations and public sector banks and enhance the banking sector's capacity to lend. The rollout of GST in 2017 has unified the domestic markets, creating synergies for both. The reduction in the corporate tax to one of the lowest in the world in 2019 has enabled corporates to build reserves for investment. Continuous unshackling of the foreign direct investment regime has led to a rapid increase in such flows in the economy. It is 706 billion, the latest FDI figures. India's digital public infrastructure has aided in enhancing the efficiency and scale of governance. The digital economy has been boosted by an increasing adoption of online payment systems and expanding use of smartphones for making payments enabled by the Jan Dhan and Aadhaar Trinity. Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity. The digitization as a wave, if you want to use that expression, has brought in large-scale changes in payment infrastructure and is helping to build data layers for enriching business analytics. According to the Ministry of Electronics and IT, the percentage of the digital economy in the total economy was 10% in 2023 and is expected to reach almost 20% of India's GDP by 25-26. UPI, the Unified Payment Interface, has also gone global and has gained acceptance in France, United Arab Emirates, Singapore, Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Mauritius. Another vital aspect of our policy agenda, has been strengthening of India's financial sector. The soundness of a banking system, marked by low levels of NPAs and enhanced provisioning for bad loans, reflects the reforms we have undertaken to improve asset quality. The financial system's ability to support the economy during periods of stress while maintaining a high level of capital adequacy is crucial to ensuring that credit continues to flow into productive sectors. Additionally, the rapid expansion of financial inclusion, with 80% of our adults now having bank accounts, has provided a solid foundation for future growth, enabling more individuals to participate in the formal economy. Just a brief number on this. When in 2014 the Jan Dhan accounts were started, much to the criticism of very many observers, saying they are zero balance accounts, banks can't afford servicing them because that will mean some money. Why would the government want to waste its time and resource driving this? Today, the zero balance accounts have together amongst themselves a deposit or savings of 2.30 lakh crores in their Jan Dhan accounts. So, even the smallest account keeper, based on his digital footprints of his withdrawing cash or putting in money or doing his business transactions through this account, have become credit worthy, and as a result, these zero balance account holders are today benefiting from two schemes of the government, PM Mudra and PM Swanidhi, but besides that, through the account aggregator, are able to negotiate between banks to pick and choose whichever is the lender which is suitable for them and for their requirements. It is a phenomenal change in terms of financial inclusion. It's not a patronizing, come you also have an account. Today they have digital footprints based on their transaction ability. They are themselves becoming credit worthy, that they can access the kind of small ticket loans that they want. And no bank is spending additional money on it because all this is digitalized. So I would think this is a phenomenal achievement of Prime Minister Modi's vision that every individual, once given access to the banking facility, will know where he will be. And today we know where we are together. India's trade policies have also undergone significant reform, with a focus on facilitation and greater integration with key economic partners. India is fostering a more competitive and export-oriented economy by pursuing deep free trade agreements with nations like the UAE and Australia, alongside initiatives such as the production-linked incentive schemes and One District, One Product scheme. Moreover, the government's emphasis on innovation supported by strategic investments in research and development is helping India transition into knowledge-driven economy. Through programs like the Anusandhan Research Foundation Fund, the government is fostering collaboration between academia, industry, and research institutions to drive innovation across the sectors. Emerging economies, including India, face the challenge of balancing growth aspirations with the need for prudent economic management amidst global uncertainties. In the current global landscape, characterized by both economic uncertainty and technological disruption, policymakers must carefully navigate the path between growth and stability. The energy transition is a prime example of this delicate balancing act. As India works to meet its energy demands, it must also contend with the need to reduce carbon emissions while adapting to consequences of centuries of legacy emissions by developed countries. One data point there, India's per capita emission is 1/3 of the global emission rate. So we are nowhere near the greatest polluting nation, despite the legacy problems that we have. 1/3 is what we emit even today. So expectation for India to comply with emission-driven, sustainable, are all there. We are committed to do it, but the picture should be clear that we are not starting from a point of weakness. India's energy policies, therefore, will need to strike a careful balance between environmental responsibility and economic growth. Furthermore, India must continue to strengthen its position in the geopolitical landscape. As the world undergoes a realignment of power dynamics, emerging economies like India would need to navigate complex international relationships. This would require a nuanced approach to diplomacy where economic interests are balanced with strategic concerns. As countries look inwards, globally there is the added risk of regress towards deindustrialization. The goal of rebalancing in strategic sectors is a lofty one for several emerging market economies, especially in the context of higher import prices on account of rising tariffs, lesser use of knowledge and technology diffusion across borders, and supply chain disruptions, which exist now and possibly newer ones can come in, to key commodities and resources. The fiscal costs of experimenting in the industries where a natural comparative advantage is not yet visible also mean that other developmental priorities could be compromised. EMEs, particularly the emerging markets in the south, walk a tightrope as the upsides to developing a resilience in strategic sectors is high, but the downsides can come at the cost of attaining development goals. Ironically, there exists the possibility that industrial policies worldwide can stir a race to the bottom and result in deindustrialization. Another key challenge, I've just got 1 more minute, I will not take more of your time doing a monologue, but another key challenge for India is managing the social impacts of technology and technological changes. The advent of new technologies is likely to have a profound effect on labor markets, particularly for a country like India with its vast youthful workforce. So while technology offers immense opportunity and potential for boosting productivity and innovation, it is also poses a risk on to job security, especially for low-skilled workers. The government is therefore focused on fostering skill development and education to ensure that our workforce is equipped to thrive in digital economy. So in conclusion, by 2047, as India celebrates 100 years of independence, we will have a chance to define a new era of prosperity, not just for our own citizens, but for the global community as well. India's role in the world is expanding, and we stand ready to engage constructively with the international community, sharing our innovations and contributing to global peace and prosperity. You would have seen that in action. These are not plain words. During COVID, the vaccine that was developed in India, patented in India, manufactured to scale in India, were distributed freely. And also the digital platform which was used to keep a record for the consumer's failure and for the citizens' basis as to who took which vaccine and when was the next vaccine due, have also been shared with countries. We didn't sit on proprietary and say, no, this is ours, we should not share. India has always been ready to share. So the coming decades will be defined by how effectively India manages its demographic dividend, strengthens its global partnerships, and navigates the complexity of a rapidly changing world. While there are challenges ahead, there are also abundant opportunities for India to lead the way, not just in economic terms, but in shaping the global discourse on technology, sustainability, and inclusive growth. So thank you for listening patiently to me.
So, Minister, you are at the School of International and Public Affairs, and in half an hour, you've basically given them 2 years worth of course. We started with economics, macroeconomic management. You talked about inclusive growth. You've talked about geopolitics. You've talked about energy transition. So in a way, I think you say, yes, you said we should shut up when we think about 1991. And behind that, before that, you've talked about fiscal stability that you've achieved over the last several years, despite some very tough shocks. You've talked financial stability with the NPA coming down. You've talked about the external stability with the rise in reserves. And you've talked about the inclusion that a country like India and other emerging markets.
I'm not sure we can adequately protect ourselves from any such risks which I can broadly point a finger at. But that doesn't mean that we'll be remaining without any protection. We make some efforts, but the scale and the duration of such uncertainties are absolutely unpredictable. It's stated obvious, but it is a matter of fact. Remember when the Russian-Ukraine offensive started? Did we think at that time that it will last this long? And did we think that simultaneously there will be another war elsewhere? And did we think that war and the spillover of it will affect the global supply chains and the path for a free transit of sea routes? The high seas are no more safe, and high seas are no more truly free for all. They are not global commons anymore. There are patches of these high seas and patches of these global commons which are now under threat of either the pirates or because of crossfire. So these are not things on which you can predict as to how long they're going to last. And if you knew that it will last for about 6 months, you can make some contingency plan for it. But if it's going to be open-ended, and if it's going to be for longer, I'm not sure any country has the wherewithal to plan for protecting itself. But equally, everybody is going to be at risk, and that itself is a sort of insurance where you see that competitively everyone is posing or post with this threat. But therefore, I go back to the same points. I remember in the G20, much before India's presidency, we were still talking about get prepared for a next pandemic and have some funds for it. There was a high-level committee formed so that the World Health Organization would have reserves to take care of quickly giving medicines, money, and any other help for poorer countries. Because at this time, at 2020, the speed with which WHO could respond was constrained by its resources as well. So there are ever so many challenges, whether it's affecting food security because large grain bowls are going through stress, whether it's going to be fuel, whether it's going to be fertilizer, the 3 Fs which have been worrying us for the last 4 or 5 years. Everybody is looking at alternative source for, fuel, for fossil fuel, because each one is making their own for renewable. But even worse is the problem of dependence. I mentioned about it. Dependence on one economy to supply to many of us. Now disruptions are happening in that. So where is the next going to be from? Where is the third source going to be from? All these have brought in at one time. And that is why when you compare with the World War-related uncertainties, the complexities are even more now. So I don't think I have an answer for your question, but I'll have to just make sure that we do adequately ready ourselves for it.
So, Minister, you did give us a good answer. You said we are building buffer, that I understand. And also, I work a lot closely with the G20 on pandemic preparedness. India has been instrumental in thinking about the global risks and the high-level independent panel that you spoke about. India has been key in the work that's going on. So in a way, part of it is also looking ahead and thinking about the risks. That's I think you answered. You have another hard-hitting and I would say tweetable quote.
Oh my God, I'm surely throwing myself for trouble.
Our goal always is to create some good trouble, so I'm glad that you see that. So a tweetable quote I would say is, and I think it was early on in your speech, the geopolitical rifts mean developing economies are key strategic movers. And as I understand, you and your delegation are coming from Mexico yesterday. You visited Mexico City. You were in Guadalajara, enjoyed some delicious food. Interesting people, and you visited a TCS facility there. So would you want to share with us what insights did you gain from this South-South collaboration that India is leading on? And you've already talked about what India has shared as gifts with its neighbors for UPI and others, but in a more mature emerging market, let's say like Mexico, are there things that India can also share with those brothers and sisters?
Well, Mexico is very interested in our UPI. In fact, the conversation with the finance minister there was to underline the fact that the NPCI, National Payments Corporation of India, will soon get in touch with the Mexican authorities to share as to what they have developed and what is it that they can share with Mexico, because we are quite happy to, as I said, many of the things that we've developed, we see intrinsic global value for all of them, because many countries are still not able to reach far-flung areas and some sections of the population. That was so graphically described to us when we went to Mexico, that even today there are parts of Mexico where they're still not able to reach with the government's policies and schemes. Banking services also need that kind of enhancement. And hearing from them, when I spoke about NPCI, I was grateful that very senior minister of finance in Mexico, he's one who's continuing the new government as well, with the same portfolio, was keen to understand how India's QR code-driven revolution is actually taking digital payments to the grassroots level. So we will arrange for MPCF. So that is one thing. I think Mexico has derived, and this is my impression, a very big benefit in terms of nearshoring. Investments which are happening for manufacturing in Mexico because they can access the North American market, and Mexico being very comfortably positioned towards South America, the Latin American market is also accessible. So nearshoring actually has helped Mexico. And this is my understanding, but that's the impression that we've had from many people. TCS, you said, yes, I visited. It is the second largest establishment of TCS anywhere in the world outside of India. India has the biggest. The next biggest is in Mexico, one of the world-class facility, and over 25,000 Mexicans are working in that establishment. And 90% of all they have establishments also in other parts of Mexico. 90% of all employees of TCS in Mexico are Mexicans. So Indian investment going to Mexico has actually helped, and I don't want to use this word helped patronizingly, has actually created opportunities for Mexican youth. And I'm so proud and happy for this development because that's the kind of thing that India can readily benefit from, and that's to say not just TCS, but 5 other IT-based companies are present in Mexico. So you can actually imagine the scale with which their businesses are flourishing and giving that opportunity for the Mexican people.
So you're saying we are underestimating how many jobs you've created during your term because you don't count the jobs created overseas.
No, but they are export earnings for us. Because the companies which are doing well outside do also send back a lot of their profits which they earn globally. So it is a matter of pride, and I don't grudge the opportunities that are being created elsewhere, because that also means that India's businesses are growing global stage. So,
and that brings me to the last tweetable remark. It was a very powerful statement, and as a self-appointed friend of the world, I felt inspired. You said India is shaping up to have a new era of prosperity, not just for its own citizens, but for the world. And that spirit you see here in the faculty, who could be earning a lot more money just a few blocks down, but they choose to give out their life to work and teach here. You see that in the students here, who are also like yourselves and many sitting in the front row that are traveling with you, have dedicated their life to public service. So, last year under India's G20 presidency, people don't know how hard you have worked to get a communique published, and that's the specialness of India. It's hard for people to say we are not friends with India, and then you get this in a time where G20 communication and cooperation is on the track. So, how do you see? At the same time, you mentioned, and this is very important, I want to emphasize for the crowd, that we should not talk about our role, India's role in the world from a position of weakness. We need to also balance the domestic growth, development need, while protecting the global commons, while being a friend of the world. Now, how do you balance that when there are indeed trade-offs? And what advice you would have for, because I know you like to interact with the students, for the students who want to both serve India, maybe there are many Indian students here in the audience, and also serve the world?
Was that a question? I mean,
yeah.
So many things at the end of it.
But you gave us so many things that it's hard to put everything together. So the question is,
yes.
What advice, if I come to you today as a SIPA student, and I bought your speech, I said, I completely agree with you, Minister. I want to serve India, and I also want to serve the world. What can I do? And how do I balance that when there are trade-offs, when the environment, the people who are pushing India on greenhouse emissions are comparing India not on a per capita basis, but on an aggregate basis. And this is the thing we hear every day with the students. So how do you balance that while advancing India's development goals and being a good citizen?
I think as it is, the presence of Indian youth in universities itself is a big message, both for India and for countries where they are living and studying. The contribution you make to academia, being good students, good meaning intense students, looking at the academic contribution that you're going to make and the learning that you acquire, itself leaves a very big impact. And I feel very, very thrilled when I hear comments that Indian students are very sought after. Not just because you use your parents' money to come and study, but you actually toil through your academic work and make sure that you get out of it, get out of the course with commendable scores. So I think you are valued for the academic performance. That itself makes me feel great about Indian young people who are in universities. And I don't for a moment, when people talk to me about brain drain, people are going away, they're not coming back. I don't worry about that because I can see the kind of contribution that Indians abroad make, continuing to be in academia, getting into corporates, corporate domain. I think the contribution is something which you cannot deny. It happens. It's all right. Simultaneously, you're also making sure that you, your family, your earnings, everything is taken care of, and that's only right. After all, you should be safe and well endowed for yourself, and only then can you. You know, I always think of this. Prior to taking off the aeroplanes and flights give you a message that if there is a air pressure problem, the thing comes down, you first put your mask and then help who's with you, a child or whoever. So you will have to first of all take care of yourself, and there's nothing wrong about it. There's nothing unacceptable. But the fact that you're able to contribute to the narrative and to the systems, and many of you have come up with patentable thoughts, innovative skills that you have, are a brilliant addition, and I appreciate every minute of it. And therefore, that doesn't worry me that, but the balancing business is only when you start thinking, is this service to the country or not? Is this service to myself? No such a dilemma should be there in your mind, because I think well-intended academic is always contributing to the country. So don't worry about balancing, it happens by natural cause.
Okay. We have some runners. Yes. And please introduce yourself.
Good evening. This is Novina. I'm a student at Columbia studying sustainability management. I'm a chartered accountant and
What management?
sustainability management. Yes, I remember your line from last year when you said you emphasized the role of chartered accountants in finding the non-financial factors and in BRSR reporting. So, in reference to that, how do we make sustainability a growth strategy for India? The value creation strategies, can we quantify them and make it part of India's growth story? And can we get that in BRSR reporting?
These are very valid and relevant concerns. But a word of caution before we do anything. Because sustainability today itself is something on which nations have different views. What is sustainable in a well-endowed, water-rich country cannot be relevant in an arid country. For instance, again going back to Mexico, the memories are very fresh. many of the technologies that Mexico uses, and they look at India, that which uses its own technology for crops growing in semi-arid areas, for water table management, are so common between our two countries, and we know where the sustainability quotient remains on that. So if a sustainability index is prepared by somebody who's next to Lake Michigan, it just is not going to work out. And I know such index are not prepared by one person. There's always a team, a stakeholder gathering, all of whom decide. But the solutions will have to be so very unique to the countries and the terrains that we're talking about. Within India, there are more than 1,000, if I'm stating it, approximated and rounded number, 1,000 ecosystems, geoclimatic ecosystems. So a solution which will be good in the mountain areas cannot be good in the semi-arid plains. So there are issues when it comes to the question of one umbrella heading sustainability. Right? So sustainability immediately raises a lot of antenna when I talk about it, because one, you're determining what is sustainable. Some things may not be sustainable, even a well-intended solution for a country. For instance, therefore, Mexico, the conversation was going around India's low-orbit satellites, which are now being used for monitoring the groundwater table, density of crops, what kind of outputs that might come out with, and so on. So for many of our agricultural practices, the satellites that we've sent are making countries like Mexico to sit up. They want to participate in it. It gives them the confidence that they'll be able to manage their agriculture better. So sustainability, therefore, I go back to this question with the question that you asked with another question as an answer, because it is important for country-specific solutions when it comes to sustainability as a thumb rule for, let us say, funds which come from some investable funds which come. Are you sustainable or not? If you're sustainable, if this project is sustainable, I give you funds. Hey, hang on, but what is the measure of sustainability? Who decides it? Is that going to be appropriate in my country's context? So, sustainability is a very vital thing when you're talking about climate and climate-related issues. But caution is my word.
So we've had a question from a student. Can we take a question from a professor?
It's up to you.
Yeah. So, Professor Miller.
Actually, you should ask the students whether they want a professor to ask.
Are we allowed to take a question from the professor?
Priority students.
Yes. Okay. The gentleman there. Well, I'm not sure if you're student or faculty.
Thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Pranav Mehta. I'm a student at SIPA studying international affairs, and before joining SIPA, I was a central banker. I worked for the Central Bank of UAE. So I can attest to how the UPI, RuPay, and digital FMI in India has influenced the world. I wanted to ask, from the finance ministry's perspective, how do you view central bank digital currencies and their effectiveness in transmitting fiscal policy, such as transfer payments and other ways in which efficiencies can be brought in because of this innovation? Thank you so much.
In India, the Reserve Bank of India has started doing a pilot on central bank-driven digital currency. There are many other countries which are also experimenting. I think Brazil has done a lot more than many other countries, as much as I've heard. Singapore is experimenting as well. But I think it's yet early days to decide on how they're going to benefit in terms of large remittances, cross-border remittances, and also whether it's going to be therefore first use it for the large ones and bring it down to the retail. So good that it is being pilot tested, but too early for me to comment.
I'm also a student currently at SIPA. I'm basically Masters of Public Administration Development Practice. In your talk today, you mentioned the Gini coefficient, and I was just curious in terms of what are the kind of steps the government has taken to basically reduce this inequality gap. Thank you.
Let me start by saying inequality being bridged, and to bridge inequality, several governments in India have made a lot of attempts. Sometimes it yielded somewhat some results, sometimes it yielded results which could be measured. But it's not as if India never tried bridging this inequality gap. But I would say with confidence that the efforts made in the last 10 years, not by my measure, but global institutional studies have shown that because several steps which are required to simultaneously be taken, otherwise you're giving just water, forgotten the rest. You're not providing hygiene, but you're providing a medical center close by. So more sick people go. So by having taken a comprehensive approach to lives and all at a time implementing schemes which we actually delivered on the ground, not just on the paper, we are able to say that this inequality is better bridged nowadays rather than ever before. What are the ways? I did mention about financial inclusion measures, collateral-free lending measures for people who don't have a piece of land to give to the bank as collateral, interest subvention measures through which poorest of the poor who are taking loans from the bank pay less because government is filling that gap, affordable housing measures, two categories where the government is giving money to people who are living in thatched roofs to make pakka houses, and to others who can put in some money, subsidized bank loan up to 45 lakhs and so on. And then the cooking gas, which actually revolutionized the poor people's kitchens. No more smoke, no more dirt. That subsidy continues even today. Then you're also making sure that the sanitation facilities are improved. I mean, whichever Prime Minister of any country for that matter would stand up on the Red Fort or their equivalents to speak about why our country needs a Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, and also why should we have toilets being built by government with its taxpayers' money for the poorest of the poor. So the approach that the government has taken is not just to say, I've given house, I've given water. House, water, electricity, access to good medicine, 5 lakh rupees of insurance for you every year, paperless identity, meaning cardless treatment, cashless treatment in hospitals. And this Ayushman Bharat card has been given to families till now, and about 70 years, elders, senior citizens also get covered under this Ayushman Bharat. And when I talk about 70 elders, we are not talking about middle class, low middle class, poor, nothing. Everybody above 70 gets that Ayushman Bharat. So the comprehensiveness with which the individual or the family is looked at for its health consideration, education consideration, business expansion consideration, or skilling consideration, each one of them address different aspects of poverty. You can be driven to poverty without access to materials or resources, or even to opportunities. All these have been simultaneously created, and therefore the results are showing that poverty actual reduction is happening now.
I know there is a long question, a short one. How about the person who's sitting all the way in the corner? Exactly. So just in the pathway to get the point.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Minister. Very grateful to be speaking with you today. My name is Sharika Zuchi. I'm a graduate student of engineering at Columbia University. And I'm also very grateful to be part of the inaugural cohort of the Quad Fellowship. And my question is from that perspective today. The Quad Coalition has been in the news, having had the summit recently and having talked about initiatives like the Quad Cancer Moonshot Project, the vaccine partnership, a lot of exciting things are happening, and I wanted to hear from your perspective how you see the Quad Coalition, A, strengthening India's own economy, and B, strengthening economies across the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you.
This is going to be an answer which not just confines itself to the Quad, but also brings in the IPEC. Because these are, although distinct entities, they have some overlaps in terms of economy, because you're asking how it will work like this. So, whilst the Quad alliance is for strategic and other purposes, I think today the approach is to make sure that with all our partners we have such a relationship where economic and strategic relationships can be strengthened. Like the immediate example before is for raising green, we were talking about sustainability, for raising green bonds and also making sure that it will go for sustainable projects. The USDFC, Development Finance Corporation, has given 500 million and Indian government would put another 500 million and they would together raise 1 billion from outside. So together 2 billion fund is being created so that there are sustainable ways in which people can transition from a fossil fuel driven kind of a program to green and renewable energy programs. So this is one example. There are several such which are happening. And the FTA with Australia also looks at the ways in which we can move from fossil fuel to more renewable ways. UAE, their FTA also helps, although that's not Quad, but I'm talking about friends and, So there are a lot of steps being taken simultaneously. To us, it may look standalone, but there is a picture emerging of India with its affiliations to several blocks, which I referred to when I was talking, is keeping its neutral position, non-aligned position. We are not friends with somebody at the cost of not being friends with somebody. We are friends with everybody. But when it comes to an economy, we have a very big responsibility. In that, we have 1.4 billion people dependent on the government of India. We have every duty to provide them their aspirations to be met, provide them the facility that they want, and therefore we shall keep India's interest above all. And for that, we will make alliances, friends, and source our products from different parts. So, Quad, yes, we will be there. IPAC, we will be there, but we'll also be there with many bilateral agreements with which we make sure that our people get it.
So that brings us to a close, but actually,
I love to come.
And if I could just say, take 1 minute to close, I want to make 3 points. First is, I hope you are as impressed with the students as I am.
He's putting me to trouble. No.
Well, we know you'll be visiting some other universities students. So I do feel that it heartens me to see the next generation, even believe it or not, I'm closer to you than to them in age. And so I can put myself a little bit heartened to see that.
No, I'm closer to them.
Anyway, so much depth, and your speech helped us see behind each sentence there are ministries, there are pages, there's thinking, there's laws, and there is so much to be done. So I hope you are also inspired by the minister's speech to deepen, go explore that universe and shape that universe. And the last thing I would say is, what I will take away from your speech is that India, some people call it a developing economy, and then they associate development with poverty, and then people do randomized control trials on how to eliminate poverty, and then most papers in top economic journals focus on those issues. But India's economy is more complex than many of the advanced countries. There's a complex financial market, there's a complex labor market, and there are so many complexities. And what we saw in the School of Public Policy here, I hope it inspires you all to engage, and that's what we're trying to do at the center, Raj Center for Indian Economic macroeconomic policies is to allow people to imagine, to see that breadth, engage with that breadth, and change the narrative and understanding of India, not just from inside India, but outside India, and bring others to be part of that conversation. So thank you so much for being
Would you
here.
mind if I add one more?
Please, please.
Since you so nicely said, for those of us who would like to study the Indian policy, economic policies, every time I quote an example of what's happened in the last 10 years, I wish the implication of that successful policy being grounded on the social side of things is studied. A good, successful scheme, well implemented, has had social impact, and several such, which is the answer that I gave for one of the questions. But here I go with one particular example, which for me as a woman has really made me sit up and say how a small gesture has actually changed the mindset, hopefully changed, or changing mindset. Prime Minister is a very pro-woman leader. He would want women to be the front, women to lead the schemes for women, and so on. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a woman defense minister full-time. You wouldn't have had a finance minister full-time. And you would have had, during the defense minister's time, provision being made in the 3 services and 4th, which is a postcard, for women to get into every rank of the 3 forces. And today you have them in combat roles. So, but the one scheme which I am very proud of is the idea of making women in rural areas use drones. They are the ones who are operating drones which are used for pesticides to be sprayed on fields, drones which are used for assessing the field, contours of the field, density of the crop field. They are taught how to use it. Nowadays, they are seen in a village at least 4 or 5 women who are all competent in handling drones. Why do I want to place so much emphasis? Just imagine in Indian villages, women are given respect, women are taken care of, they are given good clothes if the family can afford it and all that. But the mindset is, if you're working in the fields, you will come here to remove weeds. Or you will plant the rice sapling, paddy sapling. So anything which is backbreaking will be doing. And they don't grudge it, they do it over the generations they come. But when the final stakes of my crop, the merchant has come to pick it up, it will be the man standing and bargaining. What's my name? No harm. The money goes to the family. I would assume. But today in that backdrop, imagine in the field. All right, in the morning I came to remove the weeds, but in the afternoon I'm here with a drone. Tell me what do you want to do? Which pesticide to spray? And whose field is it? And then you want to know what the density of the crop is? I do. Before the man is given that technological toy in his hand, which he probably will look at his son playing on his phone. But here's this woman going in the field and chal, we'll do the... And that's gone down well. The message is, Indian men are not grudging of women coming forward. But it required such push with a political commitment. There is no resistance. The good story is this. Let's not continuously think that Indian women are being so suppressed. Maybe in many places, I'm not saying there is no suppression. But a very significant step taken by the government has gone down well. And today, drone babies are also Lakpati babies.
So the advice there is make sure that you understand when you look at the policy, not just narrowly, but all the social implications. That's the key point.
Absolutely.
So she's given us a homework, but next time when we produce papers from Columbia, SIPA, we want to be able to have that broader perspective. So with that, please join hands with me to thanking the Minister for taking our time.